Hello, thank you for joining me for today's video. So I've kind of gotten into the I don't want to make any more videos mode. I think this happens to anybody who does this. It is really painful to experience the weird dopamine highs and lows of the reactions. And because I've been so isolated for so long, it's really kind of messing with my head because I'm really looking for a way to establish community. So, with that said, I decided to explain myself a little bit better because I realized that it's probably not the depth of the discomfort with it maybe isn't as clear as it could be. And so I'm going to attempt to tell the story of how social media kind of ruined my life. And I realize that that's a little bit dramatic sounding. And obviously, my life isn't ruined because I am inside. I have food, I have shelter, I have plumbing. And so I don't think your life can be considered ruined as long as you have indoor plumbing at within feet away from you. And all of the benefits that come from that refrigeration and indoor plumbing that is so key to a good, healthy life. It's almost unbelievable. But this is the story of what happened to me 10 years ago. So, a little over 10 years ago, 2013. So, everybody talks about the Mayan calendar in 2012. For me, the real tower moment came in 2013. And by 2014, the winter, right after New Year's 2014, I lost my housing. It's a long story how that happened and involves some people that I probably shouldn't tell the story about because that is their story to tell. But I lost everything in that winter and ended up becoming homeless. So I had stayed with someone for a short time, and then he lost his housing in the process too. We ended up going out to Boulder, Colorado, where I detoxed from all of the medications that I had been on, which were quite extensive and long. I had been on them for a number of years. And it all felt very strange and vision questy, and there was a vibe of divine intervention that is almost impossible to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. But I detoxed off of very heavy duty medications in a very short period of time. And so, if there hadn't been some form of divine intervention or spiritual guidance through that, I really don't think the results would have been the same. So, after that experience, got detoxed, came back to the Midwest. Well, I guess Boulder isn't too far out of the Midwest. It is more west than Midwest. So, back into the more Midwesty areas, and attempted to kind of make sense of everything that had happened while I was in Boulder. And while I was in Boulder, it really did feel like a vision quest. It felt like I was shown aspects of tractor going by. I was shown aspects of how reality works and parallel worlds that I did not previously have any inkling, didn't know a single thing about. I think before that even happened, it was the first time I was ever exposed to a smart TV. And the way that it would choose what was coming next really got me all hyped up about spirituality, really, because everything was a message at that point. Everything felt so intrinsically embedded with spiritual meaning to me. And it was just like the perfect storm of life changing, life altering It was no longer I was here and God was there. It was like God had complete control of my life and everything was spiritual. Um, and it was just a matter of realigning it back to spirit. So it was like extraordinarily painful process, which I'm still not fully done with 10 years later. And so when I was in Boulder, there was a number of homeless gentlemen um, that helped because I was completely in a different, I was like perceiving multiple realities at once. And once you know that there are multiple realities playing out, it's really hard to go back to, let me put some nylons on and go be a secretary for a middle management type, which is basically the work that I had done before. I did a little warehouse work, but nothing of any substantial nature, nothing that felt like I was changing the world or even making it better in any way. And I had gone to school hoping that I could make things better, hoping that I could get a psychology degree and become an art therapist and really help people who are suffering. And so, what this trip to Boulder showed me was that everything that I had been learning in college was bullshit, because the reasons why people ended up in these situations were not fixable on an individual level because they were embedded in this social structure that was just not possible for certain people to be well in. Um, you can't really just take on a bunch of trauma as a child and then be condemned as an adult for not fitting in. You can't go to war for people, see atrocities, engage in atrocious behavior, and then come back totally sane and normal. So I realized that if you make one mistake in society, you're done. There really are very few second chances. The people who do get a second chance are held up as a beacon of, you know, equality and fairness, and like all you have to do is try hard, work hard, and you're going to get there. And I realized how not true that was. So when I was in Boulder, I slept outside. We had lost the car. That's a long story. I was spiritually guided. None of it really makes sense. I'm not even going to talk about the majority of the weird stuff that happened. But I slept outside, and there was a vet who, well, there was a couple that I talked to, but one who in particular made sure that we always found something to eat. There was a few restaurants that would leave, at the end of the night, whatever they had left over, they would leave so you could get mostly fresh food if you knew when to show up and they liked you. And then, um, so just basically surviving for a number of weeks. And then towards the end, we got the opportunity to clean out a restaurant that someone was redoing, and then got a little cash for that. So like all along the way, there was just little opportunities to survive and be helped in this weird way. And then I was just basically shown a bunch of stuff about reality that I did not previously know. And so when we got back, one of the things I wanted to do, so that, we got an apartment, and my boyfriend went back to work. And then what I wanted to do was figure out, another tractor going by, how to tell the story of what I had seen, how to explain, that homelessness isn't about, oh, just some people made some bad choices, and if we just support them through to make good choices, then everything will be fine and dandy. So the problem being one of helping people make good choices, as opposed to, um, once a mistake is made or too much harm done to a person, there's no like coming back from that for a lot of people. There just aren't a lot of avenues, and then the rewards are few. So there's a lot of people that really just don't get to come back to society. I think people always think like, as all you have to do is just choose to come back to society. I have not been allowed to come back to society. I am allowed to be alone in my apartment, and I get to make sure that my son is okay. Once he's an adult, most of the help that I have now will go away, and then I don't know that how I will make it. Um, and I do nothing. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't do anything. I literally don't do anything, so that I don't risk losing this little bit that I have. And because once it's gone, everybody assumes that you deserve to have nothing, that you have done something absolutely horrible, and that is why you are outside of society. The hatred of the poor is so embedded. It's like that's our whole culture, really, is to hate poor people. And that's just, it's a horrible thing to have to look at, because when you're raised in the culture, the story is that everything is based on your individual merit, your character, your integrity. And a lot of people get hurt as children and then have a very hard time coming back from it. If seeds of hatred are planted in you as a child, and then society waters them, because that's part of how our economy is built, on this like kind of competitive status seeking mindset. So it's really easy to feel like an intrinsically low self-worth, and trying to overcome that for a $30,000 a year job is difficult. We don't have a lot of avenues for like just true appreciation of a human being as a beautiful creature. It's rare. Um, so I wanted to go back out, and I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to bring cameras. I wanted to like shoot a documentary, essentially. So we went. Um, we were inside. We had an apartment. He had a job. We saved up as much as we could. Got a van. Um, my son was going to spend 2 months with my sister and his cousins, and like summer she had a pool at her place, so it was supposed to be this like awesome thing. My mom was going to stay there and help take care of the kids, and then we were going to go try to document some of this, what I had seen, because it felt like, oh, people don't have the right story about the homeless. And so this would have been like 2014-15, now moving into 2015. And so there wasn't like YouTube, street ministry people handing out bags of stuff to homeless people. The invisible people wasn't like this big thing where people, were interviewed, and some of the struggle to actually get inside was not. I think there's still just like this huge story about how anybody who's out there is choosing to be out there because there are just tons and tons of services. What those services aren't always made clear. It's just services, and so we assume, that it means they can get housing, food, healthcare, and a lot of times services might just mean case management. And they are saying no, thank you to case management, because case management is basically just allowing yourself to be tracked by paperwork, and not necessarily you need to be in housing and we're going to get you in housing. The whole process of even being aggressively um, committed to trying to get housing can take, you know, half a year to multiple years, and then you have to figure it out in between. um, it's just not the story that's being told. And I'm going off a little track here, so let me just rephrase a little bit. So I went out and collected more information. During that trip, I was we did go all the way to the West Coast, and it was much more stark than what I had seen in Boulder. So West Coast homelessness was like a whole nother level of despair. and and the lack of resources was quite astonishing, and it was much more where the idea that people were choosing that lifestyle was much more loud. And simultaneously, many rules were put in place to prevent it. So you couldn't just park wherever you wanted and sleep in a van. um, you would get tickets if you were in the wrong place. You couldn't be basically loitering in a public park, because public parks were really reserved for um, a certain kind of person, and you had to look a certain kind of way in order to not be harassed. Um, just a whole host of different a different level of animosity by property owners at people who didn't have anything. And I saw teenagers living on a mountain. um, just like feral. Not really, but just like completely disengaged from society. And then if you understood their stories, it was like, well, yeah, what are they going to do? They're never getting in. They are on the outs. They're outcast, and they're never getting in. So it used to, like, we have this image of like artists in our mind, and what an artist is like. But we don't really have avenues outside of very traditional educational routes and networking that comes through that for an artist to get work. So it's not like you can just be an artistic type of person and make a living. It's really, really difficult. And what comes from trauma, like the growth that comes outside of trauma, is generally an artistic perspective. It's you kind of get into a problem solving mode with your mind and the way you interact with reality, and it's just different. So, long story short, that was just like um, incredibly heartbreaking to see. And then, despite all of the money that we had saved up, we could not get housing ourselves because of all of the rules that come with trying to rent a place. Um, so we already would have needed to have an address on the West Coast. We already would have needed to have a job for a certain amount of time. Like, we couldn't find anybody that was willing to just let us get into a place and then get started there. Um, and so we tried to like hack it out living in the van. We found this like weird little hippie commune place, and it wasn't really. It was just like really super duper poor people that went to rainbow family gatherings and set up a little camp in the woods on an acre or two of private property, and it was brutal. So I made the decision. School was starting. I wanted my son to be with me. And so we went into, I and my son went into a homeless shelter. And I did everything that I could to try to come back from that. So I had lost everything right in 2014, and then I was kind of hoping to get resettled somewhere, and it just didn't work. Um, we were running out of money quickly, and then if you don't have an address, it's hard to get a job, and so we just got like caught up in the system, and had to move into a shelter in Washington State, and then really try to do everything that's asked of you in order to get out. And so the what the assistance that's available to get people out at that time, it was like a rapid rehousing fund, which was, it would give you, help with down payment or in the deposit, and then like 2 months of rent. So you still had to be able to make it on your own after that. Things like Section 8 or any larger long term subsidized housing had years of wait lists. So the only thing you could do is just like kind of hope to get into some place and get stabilized and make sure that you had money coming in as quickly as possible. And yeah, so anyways, we were able to get in. He was able to get a good enough job. My son could not go to school, so I had to homeschool him because he was completely traumatized from the whole experience. And I kind of went to work. I wrote a memoir. I described everything that I had seen. I self-published it. I was super active on social media, attempting to get enough of a following to like sell the book. And that's where everything just went really south, because the main message I was hearing while I was without shelter was that you're just not trying hard enough. And so I tried as hard as I could to bring something, so that it was like, I'm not trying to get something for free. Here's the book I wrote. Here is a bunch of art that, I will sell prints of. We made some t-shirt designs. Like, so I tried to do that kind of like hustle culture type Patreon vibe. And it just wasn't good enough. I think I sold like 10 books total. Like, it took like a year before even people that I was friends with bought a book. And it was actually pretty clever. Like, I didn't think it was badly written. But like the guy who ran the shelter, I had asked to do like an interview with the newspaper or something, because I thought it was, worth noting that someone wrote a memoir while staying in the shelter. Um, but I didn't talk highly enough of the shelter experience to get that sort of assistance. So, and I really didn't get any assistance anywhere from anyone like that acknowledged what I had gone through, and that I was trying to bring something back from the experience and offer it to everyone. So it just felt really like doors were kind of not opened. The word homeless is like, you might as well say you're you have the plague. You are forever scarlet lettered, and assumed to be the worst kind of person. So it didn't matter if I was college educated. It didn't matter how many books I've read. Didn't matter how much my spiritual force was awakened. It didn't matter what I knew about parallel realities and the nature of reality, or all of the miracles that happened to recover me from where I had been. None of that made one bit of difference to any of the people that I was attempting to reach out to. I couldn't get out of the bottom. I was on the bottom, and I could not, just like screaming with my hand raised, and nobody would grab it. And I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Simultaneously, right? So I'm pretty active on social media at this time, and I'm just like, like, hey, everybody, you're freaking wrong about this, and you can't just throw away people. And then the whole thing kind of like, it really, the communities were born on social media about questioning the narrative of everything and what was happening. And so I fell down rabbit hole after rabbit hole trying to figure out how was it possible that I could have, gone to college and learned all of this stuff about psychology and political science and philosophy, and also having been just a tremendously spiritual person my whole life, and have no way to reach anybody with as a person that needed help. And I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get the help. I couldn't find a way to get help. And it really just, it messed with my head so much. And then, you know, just like hearing kind of people talking about this like spiritual awakening, and everyone was just really like, oh, we got like high vibe, and oh, the planet's been taken over, and the way that we, get through this is like high vibe, raise your vibrations. And then at that point, you couldn't mention anything that you were angry about, or anything that you thought was bad or negative or needed to be changed, because then you weren't being high vibe. And that's why you got the life you got, because you weren't high vibe enough. And so I felt like and whichever direction I turned in looking for help, I was told, no, you are not right. You're not right. You're a wrong kind of person. Fix this, and then maybe your life will get better. And so it was just rejection. And when you face rejection after coming back from being homeless, there's nothing worse than the social rejection of homelessness, because it's people who literally have the things to help you, food, water. They have the things to help you, but they have decided that you have made some sort of mistake in which you no longer are allowed access to these things. So it's not like you can go out to a river and get these things. And there is no place to safely access from nature anymore. And so then people are the gatekeepers of this. And if they have been somehow convinced that you actually need to die because you're not a good enough person, which is what we are saying when we say people can't have food, shelter, and water, that is controlled collectively. I was like, oh, boy, let me find the things that I have done that warrant a death sentence, and I will fix them. And so I went through a healing journey. The Kundalini awakening had already happened, so it was like, okay, I'm just going to fix all the things that are wrong with me, because I have created some form of karma for myself that is put me in death sentence land. And so I that's where I tried to fix everything that was not clean in me that I could find, beliefs that were wrong, habits that were damaging, like bringing my sins out, and like trying to, if there were ways that I could repair the damage I had done, I would repair it, like kind of like doing a 12-step type thing, just like really attempting to make myself a good person so that I would no longer be condemned to the life that I had been given. And then maybe people would listen to me and say, hey, there might be some other people out there that have been outcasts that don't deserve it. And then in like 2017, so I wrote the memoir, and then somewhere in 2017, 18, I had a decent following on Facebook, not huge, but decent. I had a blog that was growing. And then Facebook stopped sharing my post with anyone. So I went from getting like 50 to 100, sometimes more likes on a post to only one person was seeing them. And we were friends. And that was it. So my public reach was lost. That's like the shadow banning. Nobody really knew or understood that that was happening at that time, but I was pretty vocal, um, politically, I guess, if you want to call it that. To me, it was more of a human rights issue. Um, I did not understand the depth of status quo that was being defended. Um, and so, I must have pissed off people that somehow thought that if the message I was stating um, was heard, then it would somehow impact them, and so a homeless, disabled single mother was attempting to like come back and was not allowed to speak to people anymore. I was cut off, and the fact that I live in a world where that happens, when I believed the world to be such a different place prior to all of this happening, um, it just crushed me. It crushed the last little bit of belief and um, humanity, and I had to take becoming enlightened really serious because it felt like there wasn't anything I could bring to the table if I wasn't allowed to reach the people. So I cocooned, and then it wasn't long after that where um, I dropped everything. I deleted my Facebook account. I never did have an account on. I was never active in Twitter or Instagram or any other place. So I think my blogs went on Twitter, but that nobody ever interacted with me there, and I never actually signed in and did anything there. So the only thing I had was my blog, and then you know 2020 happened and all of that upheaval, and so there was obviously no getting on and doing anything with social media then, and then it looked like things were calming down. So then I was like, well, I'll try YouTube, because in the interim, in the last 4 years that I've been cut out and cut off from social media, and not able to tell any of the stories of the things that I saw, neither the miracles and the help and the clear spiritual presence, nor any of the corruption, lies, um, manipulation, brainwashing. So it's just been again an attempt to completely fix myself, purify myself, become some form of a being that people will listen to, from what I was seeing. And it's not like other people aren't seeing it. And obviously, excuse me. Other people are seeing it. Other people are seeing it. All right. But my voice was not one of them. Um, and so, I spent 4 years really in spirit, like really just attempting to get as strong spiritually as possible to deal with what was happening in the world and make sense of it and not lose my faith, because my faith was shook. Um, I had always loved people. I loved them so much. I felt like I was here to, just to like shine God's light on people. There's so many people that, that's what I did when I was younger. I just show up in the place where somebody needed to be seen. and and it wouldn't, it didn't have to be about me. I just could just love them, like, in this weird kind of complete unconditional way, in whatever their life circumstances happen to be. So this is just part of my upbringing and part of my love for God, and the sense of oneness, of wanting to make people feel loved. So that's why when I was homeless, that's what it felt like. It was like just more training from God. And then some of the people that I talked to along the way, and gave reassurance to, it was all just really magical in a lot of ways. And so it was strange to have that juxtaposed, this whole world where you're not allowed to tell people this great experience that you have had, because there's no way to really convey it without getting caught in the riptides. It's too big of a story to tell, even this, like 35 minutes. I can't even kind of convey the depth of everything. What happened is I lost my faith in humanity because nobody was receiving my message. And I was rejected from, and then the whole competitiveness, and it was just, I didn't know how to make sense of it. I didn't know how to make sense of it. I didn't want to compete. For what? To compete, like, to somehow prove my worth again as a spiritual being. So, like, it seems no matter what I do, it's not good enough for a sense of community to be established, because I can't, there's no way to convey my experiences in a way that is meaningful enough for others. It's like we all have to go through this weird trip ourselves and face the demons of the social choices that have been made on our own, and come out the other side. So, I was hoping that I could find a new way to discuss this stuff on YouTube, and just pull out the good spiritual bits and present that. But there's still so much manipulation in these realms that it's uncomfortable, and it hurts, and I don't know how to talk about it well enough, in ways that are meaningful, that would be meaningful to others. So it just becomes this, like, cathartic, unleashing of my experience, and I don't know how helpful that is. So that's where I'm at. I was an artist at one point. It would be nice if I could do that again. When I lost my housing and everything, I had 3 years of art that I had been working on while going to college for my college classes, and access to all of those tools and teachers. So it was really pretty good art. And so all of that got lost. When I got rehoused in Washington, I rebuilt my art collection again. And then when I had to leave quickly, in 2020, I lost it again. So I've had a hard time, like, rebuilding and doing art again, because I've lost such huge collections over the course. So I'm going to try to find something again to, like, keep on expressing and to be here and to show up. I feel like I walked out of hell on multiple occasions. I gained a lot of information in that process, and it would be really nice to find a way to share it with people, or just keep waiting. I don't know. So thank you for listening. If you did, I really appreciate it. Take care.